I was working the front desk at a boutique hotel in Prague, when an American guest confidently informed me that Czechoslovakia must have amazing unity, since they kept the name even after the divorce. I blinked twice. The country had split into two separate nations in 1993, Czech Republic and Slovakia. Different governments, different currencies, different everything. He'd just asked me to book him a tour to the Slovak side of Prague. I gently explained the situation while he stared at his phone, Googling frantically. His face went red. He'd been telling people back home about his Czechoslovakia trip for 3 days. That same week, a woman from Texas tried to pay her bill with a $100 bill. Standard enough. Except she got upset when I explained we'd need to exchange it first. But dollars are universal, she said. Absolutely certain. Everyone takes American money. She'd successfully used dollars in tourist shops, which I explained were rare exceptions. She wanted to know why a hotel in Europe wouldn't accept the world's currency. I showed her the crown symbol on our price list. She asked if crowns were like those European credits she'd heard about. That was the euro. Different thing. She'd been in the country for 4 days without using Czech crowns once, surviving entirely on credit cards and confused shopkeepers. Then there was the businessman from Chicago. He showed up for a meeting at 9 a.m. on Monday. The meeting was scheduled for Monday at 9 a.m. Seems fine, right? Except he'd written the date American style 3/4/2024. He thought that meant March 4th. Everyone else read it as April 3rd. He'd flown in a month early. His hotel reservation didn't start for 4 weeks. He'd somehow not noticed that the spring weather he expected in April looked suspiciously like late winter. When someone pointed out cherry blossoms weren't blooming yet, he'd said European springs must run late. He'd been walking around Prague for 6 hours before showing up at the office, wondering why the city seemed quieter than his research suggested. A college student tried to rent a bike near Charles Bridge. Simple transaction, except she kept asking about the helmet law. The rental guy explained there wasn't one for adults. She didn't believe him. In California, she explained, you could get a ticket. She wanted to know what the fine was here so she could budget for it. He repeated, no law, no fine, no requirement. She asked to speak to his manager because this seemed like crucial safety information he was withholding. The manager confirmed. The same thing, she rented the bike but seemed genuinely nervous about breaking a law that didn't exist. She kept looking around for police. But that was just the beginning of that month. Working hotels in Europe, you learn that confidence doesn't require accuracy. Americans arrive with such certainty about how things work. The mismatches create these perfect little moments of confusion. A family from Florida checked in during July. The dad asked about the air conditioning remote. I explained. The room had opening windows and fans, standard for our historic building. He looked concerned. But it's summer, he said, as if I didn't know. I mentioned that Prague's summer nights cool down nicely, usually dropping to around 15 Celsius after sunset. He did not know what that meant in Fahrenheit. He asked if that was hot or cold. I said cool, comfortable sleeping weather. He wanted the exact number. When I said about 59 Fahrenheit, he relaxed. Then he asked why we didn't just say that. His wife reminded him they were in Europe. He said he knew that. But hotels should use American measurements for American guests. By day 3, they'd bought a portable AC unit from an electronics store. It kept tripping the room's circuit breaker because European outlets aren't built for American wattage appliances. He genuinely wanted to know why European electricity was weaker. A woman from Seattle needed to mail postcards home. Easy task. The post office was 2 blocks away. She came back 20 minutes later, cards still in hand, looking frustrated. The postal worker had tried to help, she said, but only spoke European. I asked what language. She didn't know. Not English, she was sure of that. I explained that Czech was the local language and asked if the worker had tried any English at all. She admitted he had, but his accent made it hard to understand. The real problem was the stamps. He'd shown her stamps with prices in crowns. She'd asked for regular stamps, the ones for America. He'd shown her international stamps. She'd wanted to know why they cost more than regular stamps. He'd explained international postage rates. She'd decided it was too complicated and left. I walked her back to the post office. The transaction took 3 minutes once we established that yes, international stamps cost more. And yes, that's normal everywhere. She seemed amazed it was that simple. The businessman who'd arrived a month early didn't leave after discovering his mistake. He decided to stay and treat it as an extended trip. Bold move. He came down to the desk that evening asking about data roaming. His phone bill was going to be massive, he said. He'd been using his phone normally for 6 hours. I suggested he connect to Wi-Fi. He said he had Wi-Fi at home in Chicago. I meant our hotel Wi-Fi. He didn't know hotels had that. I showed him the network name and password on his room key card, where we print it for every guest. He'd thought that was some kind of loyalty program code. He asked if the Wi-Fi was fast enough for American websites. I assured him the internet worked the same way here. He seemed skeptical, but tried it. 10 minutes later, he came back down, delighted. "European Wi-Fi is pretty good," he announced. I didn't have the heart to tell him it's just regular Wi-Fi. A graduate student from Boston arrived for a semester abroad. Smart woman doing research on medieval architecture. She'd prepared extensively, learned some basic Czech phrases, read guidebooks. Very thorough, except she'd somehow gotten the idea that Europe used military time exclusively. Not just sometimes, not just for official schedules, but everywhere, all the time. She'd set her phone to 24-hour format before arriving. Fine, so far. The issue came when she tried to make restaurant reservations. She'd ask for 1900 hours with full confidence. Most places understood. One Italian restaurant owner got confused because she kept saying 1900 hours like a soldier. He thought she wanted to book for the entire evening. She'd also been showing up for casual meetups at exactly the stated time, down to the minute. In Czech culture, being exactly on time for social gatherings is actually slightly awkward. Fashionably late by 10-15 minutes is normal. She couldn't figure out why she was always the first person at parties. When someone finally explained, she was mortified. She'd been silently judging everyone else for being late to everything. My favorite from that month was the retired couple from Arizona. Sweet people, genuinely kind. Just monumentally confused about geography. They'd booked a day trip to Vienna. Very popular excursion from Prague. About 3 hours by bus. They showed up in the lobby at 6 a.m. for a 9 a.m. departure, just to be safe. American travel anxiety runs deep. The tour guide arrived, did a head count, and they were off. Everything was fine until lunch in Vienna. The couple asked the guide when they'd be crossing into Germany. The guide said they wouldn't be. Vienna is in Austria. They looked baffled. The wife pulled out her phone, showed the guide a map. But Austria is in Germany, she said, certain. Like how Boston is in Massachusetts. The guide, very patiently, explained that Austria and Germany are separate countries. Independent nations. Different governments, the husband protested. World War II history, he insisted, proved they were the same place. Germany and Austria, he'd learned, were allied. The guide tried to explain that alliances don't make countries the same nation. America and Britain were allied too. That clicked. Sort of. They spent the rest of the day very quiet, recalibrating their entire understanding of European geography. On the bus home, the wife leaned over and whispered to me, "Did we need a different passport for Austria?" I assured her that the Schengen zone meant she didn't. She had no idea what that meant, but seemed relieved. The thing about cultural misunderstandings is that they escalate in proportion to certainty. The more sure someone is, the bigger the collision. I was working a late shift when a woman from Dallas asked about booking a train to Amsterdam. She wanted to leave Thursday, return Sunday. Standard weekend trip? I pulled up the schedule, showed her options. She frowned at the screen. "These times are wrong," she said flatly. I asked what she meant. She explained that the 14:22 departure couldn't be right because trains leave on the hour or half hour. That's how schedules work. I tried to explain that European trains run on precise timetables, not rounded times. She insisted I was reading the 24-hour clock wrong. The train, she explained slowly, must leave at 2:30, and I'd somehow converted it incorrectly. I showed her 3 different trains: 14:22, 15:47, 17:13, all odd times. She asked to speak to someone who understood train schedules. My manager came over, confirmed the exact same information. The woman booked the train, but remained convinced the departure time would actually be 2:30. She showed up at the station at 2:25 on Thursday. The 14:22 train had left 3 minutes earlier. She missed her trip because she couldn't accept that trains don't run on American assumptions. A medical sales rep from North Carolina came for a conference. Professional guy, traveled for work regularly, very put together. He asked about gyms nearby. I recommended one 2 blocks away, gave him a day pass voucher the hotel provides. He came back an hour later, sweaty and annoyed. The gym had a sauna, he explained, which was great. But there was a problem. People were using it naked. Not everyone, but enough that it made him uncomfortable. He wanted to know if that was legal. I explained that sauna nudity is completely normal in Czech culture, and most of Central and Northern Europe. Optional in some places, required in others. He was shocked. "Required?" he repeated. I clarified that some traditional saunas require nudity for hygiene reasons. Sitting on a towel, no swimwear. He thought I was joking. I wasn't. He asked how they enforce that. I said the staff just tells you the rules when you enter. He couldn't wrap his head around it. So a gym employee tells you to take your clothes off? I explained it more like a swimming pool that requires swim caps. Just a house rule. He decided to stick to the regular gym equipment. Later that week, I saw him at breakfast, telling another American guest about the weird European gym laws. The story had evolved. Now it was mandatory nudity everywhere. Government regulated, strictly enforced. I didn't interrupt. A food blogger from Portland came for a culinary tour. She was documenting everything, taking photos, writing reviews. Very thorough work. She went to a traditional Czech pub for dinner on her second night. Came back fuming. The service, she said, was hostile. The waiter had been rude. She'd waited 20 minutes for her check. When she'd asked for it earlier, the waiter had seemed annoyed. I asked if she'd enjoyed the meal. She had, she admitted. The food was excellent, but the service was terrible by any standard. I gently explained that in Czech dining culture, waiters don't bring the check until requested. Hovering and rushing diners is considered rude. When she'd asked for her bill early by local standards, the waiter probably thought she was unhappy with something. Asking repeatedly made it worse. She processed this information slowly. So waiting forever for the check is the polite version? I confirmed. In many European countries, the table is yours for the evening. No pressure to leave. The check comes when you're ready. She'd interpreted exceptional service as terrible service because the cultural framework was inverted. She asked if she should change her review. I suggested she might add context about different service expectations. She did. But she also noted that American readers would find it frustrating. She wasn't wrong. A college basketball coach from Indiana arrived for a youth tournament. Big guy, friendly, loud voice that carried across the lobby. He needed to visit a pharmacy for antihistamines. Pollen allergies, very common. I directed him to the pharmacy across the street. He returned 15 minutes later. No medication, looking confused. The pharmacist, he said, had refused to sell him anything without talking to him first. She'd asked questions about his symptoms. He just wanted to grab the medicine and go, like at a drugstore back home. I explained that Czech pharmacies are more medical than retail. Pharmacists are highly trained and take their role seriously. They assess whether the medication is appropriate. He found this invasive. "I know my own allergies," he said. I didn't disagree, but explained that's the system. Medicine isn't just sitting on shelves for self-service, except for very basic items. He asked if this was a European Union regulation. I said it varied by country, but was common across Europe. He seemed to view it as government overreach. I viewed it as pharmacists doing their jobs. He eventually went back, answered the questions, got his antihistamines. But he complained about it twice more that week. Once at breakfast, once while checking out. The idea that buying medicine required a consultation felt like an infringement on personal freedom. I understood his perspective, but I also understood the pharmacist was just following standard protocol that makes perfect sense in the local context. The most interesting misunderstandings happen when both sides think they're being perfectly reasonable. Nobody's wrong, exactly. The systems just don't match. A documentary filmmaker from Oregon checked in for a 2-week stay. Quiet guy, very focused on his work. He came down to the desk one morning, looking embarrassed. He'd been trying to do laundry. The machines in the basement were coin-operated. Simple enough, except they took 10 crown coins only. He'd been to 3 stores trying to break larger bills into the specific coins needed. One clerk had given him a handful of coins, but they were the wrong denominations. Another place didn't have enough tens in their register. He'd been trying to solve this problem for 40 minutes. I gave him a small bag of 10 crown coins we keep at the desk for exactly this situation. He was so relieved. Then he asked why the machines couldn't just take credit cards or bills. I explained that these older machines predate that technology, and replacing them is expensive for a small hotel. He understood, but seemed baffled, that coins were still necessary for anything in 2024. He'd been entirely cashless in Portland for 2 years. The idea of needing specific coins for a basic task felt antiquated. I didn't disagree, but pointed out that's reality here. He did his laundry. The next week, he started leaving his 10 crown coins in a cup on the lobby counter with a note. For the next American doing laundry, it became a little tradition. Other guests added to it. A journalist from Washington, D.C. arrived to cover a political summit. Professional, experienced, had traveled internationally before. She asked about getting around the city. I recommended the metro and trams, gave her a map, explained the ticket system. She thanked me and left. 2 hours later, she came back with a story. She'd bought a ticket, validated it in the yellow machine like I'd explained, and gotten on the tram. Normal so far. Then ticket inspectors had boarded. She'd shown her ticket proudly. They'd checked the timestamp and informed her it had expired. She was confused. The ticket was for 30 minutes. She'd bought it 35 minutes ago. That meant it was expired. She'd assumed buying the ticket gave her unlimited rides for the day, like a day pass. I asked if she'd read the ticket. She pulled it out. Clear text, 90 min on the version she'd bought. She'd grabbed the cheapest option without reading the duration. The fine was 800 crowns, about $35. Not terrible, but she was frustrated with herself more than the system. She'd just assumed it worked like the DC Metro, where each trip is separate, or you buy a day pass. The concept of timed tickets that cover all transport for a set duration was new to her. She paid the fine, bought a proper day pass, and wrote an article about it later. The headline was something like, "What I Learned from a Prague Tram Fine." Very self-aware piece. She interviewed other travelers who'd made similar mistakes, turned her embarrassment into content. A software engineer from Seattle came for a tech conference. Smart woman, very detail-oriented, the kind of person who reads instruction manuals. She was staying in an Airbnb but stopped by the hotel to ask me something. We'd met at the conference. She was having trouble with her apartment's heating. The radiators had these valve-like controls, numbered 0 through 5. She turned them all to 5. Maximum heat. Made sense. Except the apartment was now unbearably hot, and she couldn't figure out how to turn it down. She'd tried turning the valves to 0. Nothing changed. The heat kept pouring out. She'd opened all the windows, which helped but seemed wasteful. I explained that radiator valves don't work like American thermostats. They don't give instant results. The number indicates the target temperature the radiator will maintain. Setting it to 5 tells it to heat the room to about 24 Celsius, roughly 75 Fahrenheit. Very warm. The radiator then keeps heating until it hits that temperature. Turning it to 0 tells it to stop heating. But the existing hot water in the system takes time to cool down. Hours, sometimes. She'd essentially superheated her apartment and then wondered why it didn't cool instantly. I suggested she set the valves to 3, which would give her a comfortable 20 Celsius, about 68 Fahrenheit, and be patient. She seemed slightly annoyed at how slowly the system responded. American HVAC systems react within minutes. European radiators work on a completely different logic. Slow, steady, energy efficient, but not immediate. She thanked me for the explanation and mentioned she'd spent the first 2 nights either freezing or sweating because she kept overcorrecting. The learning curve for apartment heating should not be this steep, she joked. But here we are. The best story from that stretch involved a family from Minnesota. Parents, 2 teenage kids, nice people. They'd rented a car to drive around Bohemia for a few days. Classic tourist route. They came back early, looking shaken. The dad explained what happened. They'd been driving on a rural highway when they saw a speed camera. Standard yellow box, clearly marked. He'd been going exactly the speed limit. No problem there. But after passing 3 more cameras in 20 kilometers, he got paranoid. He was certain they'd caught him speeding somewhere. He became obsessed with checking his speedometer. Then his teenage son asked why all the signs were in kilometers, if they were driving miles per hour. The dad looked at his speedometer again. It had 2 rings of numbers. The inner ring, larger and more prominent, was kilometers. The outer ring, smaller, was miles. He'd been reading the miles per hour numbers the entire time. When the speed limit said 90, meaning 90 kilometers per hour, he'd been doing 90 miles per hour. That's about 145 kilometers per hour. For 3 days, he'd been driving nearly double the speed limit on country roads, through small towns, past schools. He'd wondered why everyone was driving so slowly. They'd returned the car immediately and taken trains for the rest of their trip. He was waiting for speeding tickets to arrive. In the mail, back in Minnesota. I explained the tickets. Usually come within a month or 2, sent to the rental company, who forwards them with an admin fee. His face went pale. Multiple speed cameras, massive violations, international fines. He'd been so confident in his driving. Never occurred to him to check which unit the speedometer was displaying. His wife wasn't speaking to him. The kids thought it was hilarious. I suggested they budget for the fines. He asked how much. I estimated, conservatively, around 8,000 to 10,000 crowns total. Maybe $400. Possibly more. He looked sick. But honestly, he was lucky nobody got hurt. The wildest story came during my last week at that hotel. A woman from Phoenix, maybe mid-30s, checked in for a solo trip. She seemed nervous but excited. First time in Europe. She'd been planning this for years. Very sweet person. On her 3rd day, she came to the desk nearly in tears. She'd been trying to visit Kafka's birthplace. Simple enough. It's a marked location in Old Town, but she couldn't find it. She'd asked several locals for directions. They'd pointed her the right way. She'd walked in circles for an hour. Finally, she'd given up and come back. I offered to show her on a map. She pulled out her phone. I saw the problem immediately. Her Maps app had location services turned off. She'd been trying to navigate using the blue dot showing her position, but the dot wasn't moving. It was stuck at the airport. She'd been walking around Prague for 3 days using a static map, guessing her location based on street signs and landmarks. She'd somehow made it to the hotel, to restaurants, to tourist sites, all without GPS. When I explained that her phone couldn't track her location with the setting turned off, she looked stunned. She'd thought location services were just for apps to send her ads. She'd disabled them to save battery. I turned them on. The blue dot jumped to our actual location. She watched it move as she walked across the lobby. "Oh my God," she whispered. "This is so much easier." I asked how she'd been navigating. She'd been studying the map each morning, memorizing routes, using the sun for direction, like a 19th century explorer. She'd actually developed a pretty good sense of the city layout through pure observation. I was impressed. Frustrated for her, but impressed. She laughed about it. Then she went to find Kafka's birthplace, which took her 8 minutes with working GPS. These stories don't really end, they just accumulate. Each week brings new guests, new countries, new misunderstandings that feel both predictable and surprising. Americans arrive with confidence built from a lifetime of knowing how things work. Then they hit European systems designed on completely different assumptions. Language barriers, measurement differences, cultural expectations that don't translate. Most figure it out eventually. Some never quite do. A few embrace the confusion as part of the experience. The journalist who wrote about her tram fine had the right attitude. Mistakes make better stories than perfect trips. Nobody wants to hear about the time everything went smoothly. I left that hotel job last spring, but I still hear stories from friends working the industry. The misunderstandings haven't stopped. Americans still expect air conditioning in ancient buildings. They still try to pay for everything in dollars. They still show up a month early because date formats are reversed. And honestly, that's fine. Travel is supposed to be disorienting. The discomfort means you're somewhere truly different. The confusion means you're learning. Every misunderstanding is just proof that the world is bigger and stranger than your corner of it. That Czech trains don't run on American schedules. That radiators don't work like thermostats. That Czechoslovakia isn't a country anymore and hasn't been for over 30 years. These aren't problems to solve. They're just reality. And these stories, they never stop coming.